once again, we're in Bath on a wonderful blue sky and sunny day, and we're going to be exploring Union Passage and the corridor today, sharing with you lots of little nooks and crannies where you can get handcrafted food and drink. But we're starting here at Rebecca Fountain. This was erected by the Temperance Society in the 19th century as a way for public to access a clean water supply. And water is really important to the city. We start our Food Heroes tour here at the Rebecca Fountain, which runs from Wednesday to Saturday at 9:45 in the morning. And water is important because through here where we're going now is the Roman Baths Museum and the pump room, which is where you can go and try the thermal water from our hot springs. Now, the pump room is where Jane Austen set one of her early novels. In fact, her first manuscript, which didn't get published until after she passed away in 1817, was called Susan. Eventually, she reworked it as Northanger Abbey, and it was published in conjunction with her famous book Persuasion. But in Northanger Abbey, or Susan as it originally was, Catherine Morland, the central character, and her friend go into the pump room to take the waters and circulate, as everybody did at the time. And while they were in there, they spotted two eligible bachelors, and they followed them out here as they left, crossing Abbey Churchyard, as we will do now, and going underneath this archway coming up ahead of us. Now, the street on the other side here is called Cheap Street, and that comes from an old English word for market. There are lots of cities and towns across the country with cheap streets like this one. Today, there's hardly any traffic that comes down here. It's quite restricted. But in Jane's time, this street would have been one of the busiest in the city because just down here is where we used to have one of the city's biggest coaching inns. So there was lots of carriages coming in and out here with business coming to and leaving the city. And unfortunately, Catherine Morland, Jane's central character in Northanger Abbey, and her friend got stuck here, and they lost their two potential suitors as they were trying to cross the street between the carriages that were passing. But we find it pretty easy to cross to stay as we head up into Union Passage, which is just ahead of us here now. As I said, this is an area that's full of lots of lovely little shops, gift shops, food outlets. And actually, the Silver Shop is a jewellery shop coming up on the right here. This is a family business which has been in Bath for a long time. Union Passage runs parallel to Union Street, which is one of the main streets running through the city centre. And that's just behind these buildings away to the right here. As you can see, it's sort of hidden away back here behind the main street. But you can see how to access it as we did from Abbey Churchyard. One of the first businesses we're going to stop at here is Tealith. Now, this is owned by an Italian couple, one of whom has Taiwanese heritage, and bubble tea, which they serve here, has Taiwanese origins, going back to the 1980s. Now, a lot of people think that bubble tea is so cool because of the different toppings that we put in it, such as tapioca balls and popping boba. But actually, bubble tea has lots of different flavors in it, and they have to shake it up to mix the flavors, and that generates bubbles which rise to the top, which is where the name comes from. A little further along from Tealith, we have the corridor, and we'll be heading down here in a second. The corridor is one of the earliest shopping arcades in the country, or shopping malls, and you can see it is just a corridor. You walk straight through to the high street, as we will do in a minute. This was built in 1825, and it has this lovely barrel-shaped glass roof. And actually, as we walk along, you might spot some glass walkways above us with statues on them, and that's where musicians used to sit and play music to you while you were doing some shopping. More lovely places down here to eat, including one of my favourites, which is Dough. Dough is a pizza restaurant, and they serve lots of interesting pizza here. Some of your usual suspects for the toppings, but what is important about them and what gets them the most attention is their bases. While you can select your favourite pizza topping here, you don't just have to have it with your regular sourdough base. You can choose lots of different pizza bases, including one made with seaweed, which comes out black, and when you tear it open, it's green. It's got a kind of salty texture to it, and it really lifts the flavour of whatever you put on it. That's one of my favourites. But they also have lots of gluten-free options, including one made with purple corn, which kind of comes out pink. There's also a yellow one that's made with turmeric. But loads of options here, really interesting. You might remember them from our Kingsmead Square tour because they're opening another branch over in Kingsmead Square at the west side of town, and they also have an outlet in Bristol. But next door here, we have Lokum. Now, Lokum is owned by Ahmet and Dışar, who are just in the window there, and they sell all their lovely Turkish delight, which comes direct from Turkey. These guys are from Istanbul originally, and they come to Bath after spending a short time in London. They came here to open their business and start their family here. They also sell a lovely range of baklava, which is all made by a professional baklava chef. And a Turkish delight is in lots of different flavors in a kind of pick and mix setting below. It's a great place to come and buy a gift. But as we continue down the corridor, we'll be coming up to Society Cafe at the end here. Now, again, you may remember Society Cafe because if you watched our Kingsmead tour, that's where we started. Society Cafe are a locally owned business. They also have an outlet in Oxford, and they serve lots of really good coffees. There's also often a guest roast on the board here, and it's one of the few places in Bath where you can go and sit, which is pet friendly. And they're right on the high street, which we'll just spend a moment on here because opposite us is the Guildhall and the Guildhall Market. Now, that's full of lots of independent traders, many of whom we work with on our tours, but we're not going to be going in there today because we're doing a separate tour which goes into the Guildhall Market in a few weeks' time. We're going to go back in towards Union Passage as we head through Northumberland Place. On the left here is a unit which was empty at this time last year, and a new restaurant is going to be opening here called Portofino, which is going to be an oyster bar and seafood restaurant. But coming up a little bit further on our left up here in Northumberland Place is one of my favourite places in Bath, which is Jars Meze. Now, Jars is owned by a Corfiot family from Corfu on the west coast of Greece. These guys came here about 4 or 5 years ago and opened their restaurant, and they specialise in small plates or meze, inspired by the cuisine of Greece and more specifically Corfu, which really does have its own culinary traditions. The Jars family own and run this restaurant, and Mama Julie works in the kitchen where she cooks all the food. Her husband Nick works behind the bar most of the time, and her eldest daughter Maria is the manager here, and her brothers and sisters and their friends all work the restaurant floor. Food has an amazing way of inspiring memory, and having worked in Corfu myself for a number of months many years ago, it's not unusual that I come here and fill up my table with lots of lovely meze, and in my head I'm immediately transported back to the island. But what I really love about this place is it's got such a strong family environment. You know you're coming into a family business the way that you're welcomed as soon as you walk across the threshold. Next door, they have their cake shops, but actually the restaurant is upstairs and the two are connected. And actually next door is the other side of Dough, which we saw earlier, and you can see some of the bases advertised in the window there. But we're coming back up to Union Passage just ahead of us, and we're going to turn right here to head up to Good Day Cafe, which has become pretty famous in Bath over the last few lockdowns that we've had over the course of 2020 and 2021, as they've managed to keep going. Now, of course, we've not been able to sit in here for some time, but hopefully over the next few weeks, as social restrictions start easing, we'll be able to come back here and sit down and enjoy one of their lovely breakfasts or their lunches that they do here. Now, Good Day is owned by Steph, who has a penchant for pink. You can see all the writing on the window in pink. Her hair is the same colour. And they become well known for their range of cookies, their range of brownies and brookies, which are a combination of the above two. And more recently, they've become well known for their scotchies, which are like a Scotch egg, but they normally have a lovely gooey centre like a Cadbury's cream egg or caramel or Oreo cookie filling. And then they're surrounded by brownie, and then the whole thing is dunked in chocolate, which goes hard and sets. Very rich, very naughty, but very, very good. So popular that on Saturday they had a long queue going down here. The restaurant cafe is upstairs, but just the servery downstairs is open during lockdown. But we're going to finish up at the top part of Union Passage. This is actually called New Bond Street Place, with a pretty well-known outlet from a local baker, a man called Richard Bertinet, who's from Brittany in northern France originally, and he's been baking bread since he was 14 years old. And the Bertinet Bakery still make all their products to his recipes. Now, Richard Bertinet came to Bath a number of years ago and started up the Bertinet Kitchen, which is in the north side of the city centre. And they teach all their classes there. And it's here where they sell all their products. And their breads and their pastries are all available in the shop. But their school is still up at the top of the city. But also this unit is where we used to have the shop and offices of a man called John Arthur Roebuck Rudge and William Freeze Green, whose names are just behind me here. And these guys were pioneers in the early days of making moving pictures or cinematography. And we'll tell you the whole story about them when you come on our tours, when we come to visit the Bertinet Bakery, and you get lots of lovely samples. And I hope you can join us here very, very soon.